All right, we're live. Hello,
Yay.
everybody. Yay. I'm Carrie Loranger. I'm the founder of the 9 to Thrive newsletter. It's way more than a newsletter, it's a community where I help creators, coaches, consultants, side hustlers, and solopreneurs turn one newsletter into a portfolio of paychecks. So, anybody looking to build multiple income streams off of their Substack, it's the place to be. And today I'm joined by Shannon Smith, who does amazing work kind of on the behind the scenes part to what I do. Shannon, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about your publication?
Sure. Well, Carrie, thanks for inviting me. My name is Shannon Smith, and I am the creator of the Get Untrapped publication. And I'm learning a lot from Carrie, so that's why I became a subscriber of your publication to help build this out. But my focus in my work with my publication is to help professionals and creatives make decisions that they don't regret, so they can reclaim that clarity, restore their energy, and rebuild their self trust. And so it's really near and dear to my heart because it's really born out of my own lived experiences with struggling to make those decisions that serve me best as opposed to aligning with other people's expectations. So that's why this topic is really exciting to be able to,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I'm actually working on a book, and then one of the chapters is about the permission rule. Like, we're always looking for permission from other people. But
Yes.
you and I got to chatting about this topic because um, we're just, it's just so interesting how we're conditioned to, we have voices in our head from people who may be long gone out of our lives. But oh, I'm just looking at the comments.
Yeah, the
Somebody saying it's
comments,
their
yes.
first live. Yay, first live. Welcome.
Welcome.
I hope we deliver something valuable for you today. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, we were talking about, like, you have the life expectations, right? Go to college, get married, buy a house, have kids, climb the corporate ladder, retire, all of the things, right, that are in our heads. And then, I mean, I put together a huge long list. I've got it on my screen in front of me, but there's a lot related to work and how you should live your life. Um, but then there's even like expectations from other creators, right? If you're a creator on Substack, there's like, oh, you have to do this and you have to do this. And I also offer a very prescriptive formula, but that's what's worked for me. And it's not necessarily what's worked for anybody else. So, we kind of get in this, what we were calling the should spiral, right? Should.
Yes. Hmm.
So, why don't you talk about that, and why shoulds can be so toxic for people?
Yeah, when we were talking about that, I instantly thought about my first encounter with the shoulds. I was in a therapy session and I was like bawling, and I'm like, I should have had this done by now. And I was just going down the line of all the shoulds. And so my therapist was like, let me stop you right there. And she's like, says who? And that was like a huge pattern interrupt for me when she said, says who? And I'm like, wow, I guess I'm the one that made this list of all these shoulds. But then as I dug deeper, I realized that although I had this long list of shoulds, it was informed by my family dynamic. My father was a preacher, um, and I came from a very religious, strict background. And then, so there's all these shoulds there. You should be married. You should live your life in this prescriptive way. Then
Mm,
you go from that to work, right? You should, have a certain degree, or you should come from a certain school, so these shoulds have informed a lot of my decisions. And I think the reason why it's so dangerous and it's so harmful is that it's not based on our identity. It's external rules and regulations. And that doesn't always align with who we are. It doesn't always align with our strengths, our passions, our interests. And so it causes a lot of disruption internally that can impact our self-esteem, our outlook, and those were all the outcomes that happened for me was the low self-esteem, the comparing myself to others and feeling inferior simply because there's this list of shoulds that's not informed by who I am, but simply informed what other people are saying I should be doing. And, it's not until you really break free from that and get a clear, objective view of who you are, what you want, and where you want to go that you're able to kind of put those shoulds to the side. At least
Yeah.
that's how it worked for me.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think growing up, our parents played a huge role, and you and I were just discussing this earlier. I actually find myself repeating things that my mom said or my dad said, like phrases, and some of them are healthy, some of them aren't. um, I mean, the one I actually like a lot and that I live by and I quote is, you should do unto others as you would have others do unto you. That means, put yourself in their shoes. Think about how you want to be treated. But what it's done is it's caused me my whole life to really feel a lot of empathy for other people. And I become a highly sensitive introvert. And
Mm,
so, and for the longest time, I thought something was wrong with me. It's like, oh, something's, not right here. I don't like loud environments. I don't like parties and bars, and I don't particularly like drinking alcohol. And it's just my disposition. It's and people
right.
look at you sideways, when you're out somewhere and you're not drinking, and they're like, "What?" And I would sometimes succumb to the pressure of, well, let's have a drink because that's what I should be doing in this,
Mhm.
you know. But yeah, it's just the older I get and the more confident in who I am, the more I can adjust and try to shut down some of those voices. So, which brings me into the second one we wanted to talk about, the comparison trap, right? So, that
Mm,
scenario where I'm with a group and they're drinking, whether it's business or pleasure, and I'm not, it's like, okay, I'm looking at them, and feeling awkward. But it's also in business too, right? I mean, I think the creator economy and social media play a huge role in this. We are always looking at what others are doing online, and we can't help but compare ourselves. Oh, they have so many followers, right? That's the first thing we gravitate towards. How big is their audience? But we don't look at what the value is that they're bringing, even if it's a smaller audience. Yeah. So, I
yeah,
mean,
for sure. And I
there's,
think too, like when we see the constant post of, oh, I got this amount of subscribers in 30 days, and it instantly makes you feel like, well, what am I doing wrong? Or, it starts to trigger that self-doubt. And now the instinct is, well, I need to work harder. I need to do more
mhm,
because they got this and I should have that. And it goes back to the shoulds. But I think for me, what has really helped is just recognizing that comparing my life to someone else's timeline is like comparing apples to oranges. Like we all have our own pace, we all have our own unique constellation of experiences, expertise, you know, and that's going to cause us to have different outcomes. And so it really is a waste of energy to
yeah,
compare, yourself to someone else.
yeah, it is totally, but it's hard to not do it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
I always like to take a step back when I find myself in that situation, if I'm even conscious of it, and say, but what am I doing?
Mm,
What am I doing? Even though I'm not doing what they're doing, what am I doing that they're not doing? Maybe,
right.
or just just self affirming that I'm making great progress and I'm doing things fine. That seems to help a little bit more. Um, and then I think a lot of people get into their channel based on their shoulds and the voices in their head and kind of their conditioning. But then they become deeply dissatisfied with their situation and they want to make a change. And, I think anybody who's been in a 9 to 5 job at a, working for someone else has got really used to um, approvals, right? There's a system. Nothing goes out without approval. Products, software, marketing, sales
Mhm,
messaging, everything is approved. And that somehow gives us the feeling that we're not going to make a mistake. So, because all these other people approved it, even if it goes south, hey, I
mhm,
don't have to take responsibility. That's not on me.
mhm,
But when you become an individual creator, or an entrepreneur, or solopreneur, everything's on you. And when I first made my transition from 18 years in the corporate world to being a business owner in 2023, I was looking for permission. I
mhm,
was looking for approval. And then I realized the approval I'm seeking is never coming because I'm the only one that can give it. So that's another huge thing that I think people struggle with, because if you find yourself in that situation where you're deeply unhappy because you followed the other people's, thoughts of what you should do,
mhm.
what do you do? I mean, it's really hard when you're really deep into something to get out of it, like a steady paycheck with benefits. Yeah.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
what do you recommend about that, giving yourself permission to go ahead and pivot?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I had to overcome was the too late, too old, too something to start over.
Mhm.
And for me, one of the areas that I had to really do that pivot was in marriage. So I got married very young, because of that you should be married. So I got married at 21, but it was a very unhealthy situation. And so I had to make a decision. And I always call it this crossroad of decision that you typically come to where something is not working, but you don't really know or feel confident if you're gonna make the right move. So for me, it was like, okay, do I leave? Do I stay? Do I leave? Do I
Mhm.
stay? And um, it hit me. I either can stay in this path for another 10 years and keep getting exact same results, or I could take a chance and go down this path of the unknown, but I know at least I'm not gonna have this set of circumstances repeating it. So sometimes the fear of the unknown outweighs the fear of the pain and the stagnation or dissatisfaction that we're in, and sometimes that's why we stay. But for me, I had to weigh it out, and I decided to go down the path that was unknown. So I relocated to another city. I took me and my 4 kids, started over. And once I did it, what I've learned is that the bravery and the feeling of being ready never comes before the decision. It only comes after. It's like the bravery and the feeling of I made the right choice happens after you start moving, after you start taking action in the direction that you want to go. So waiting to be ready, waiting for permission, it's just never going to happen. You just got to take action. And I didn't have all the answers. My sisters thought I was crazy. And they were upset that I was leaving my hometown. I've never lived anywhere else, but that was the choice and it paid off. But I didn't have a guarantee ahead of time that it was going
Yeah.
to be successful. So when it comes to the pivot, you just have to really go back to self trust. There have been times in your life where you've made decisions before and it panned out. You didn't have all the answers. And we have to give ourselves a lot more credit that we figured things out before. We can do it again and trust that you're gonna make the right move for yourself. And even if it doesn't pan out exactly the way you thought, you still have the inner resources, the wisdom, and enough experience from the past to figure out what to do next. So it really
Yeah.
boils down to self trust.
Oh my gosh, that is so powerful. Yeah, because I was in the same situation. I relocated after
Wow!
13-year marriage with my 3 small children, across the country to
Wow!
California, and it was the scariest, hardest thing I have ever done, and I had to dig deep in believing in myself, and
Mhm,
it was shaky the first few years. It really was. Financially, stability wise for my family, I tried to do my best, but I mean,
mhm.
my gosh, it was scary.
Yeah.
And it did work out in the end. Um, And, I left the corporate world after 18 years to do my own business, and it's worked out well for me. I didn't know that going in. I was
Mhm.
really afraid, but I did it because I had some other like physical health challenges that were really making doing working in an office at a desk every day difficult. You can see my environment now. This is my
Yeah.
office. I can put my foot up. I have
Beautiful.
I have some problems with my foot, but yeah. So it's something I had to do for my own health and well being, and I didn't know it would work out. I was fully prepared for the opposite. But one thing I do in the case where I need to pivot and I'm not sure,
Mhm.
I consider what is the worst case scenario in this
Mm.
situation. If I do this, if I leave my 9 to 5 and I get zero business, what will my life look like? And what will I do instead? And you may not have all the answers like you said, but I had some I had some ideas of what I would do in that situation if the worst case scenario happened. And that kind of makes the pivot decision easier.
Mhm.
If you can live with the worst case scenario, that's okay, for a while until you figure out what to do instead. So, that's kind of one of the techniques that I use there.
Yeah, I love that. I think that that's gold to just,
Yeah.
think about the worst case scenario, and if you can live with it, move forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I wanted to just talk about awareness. How do you recommend like what are some things I think these shoulds in our head from other people's ideas and things are so enmeshed in us we don't even realize when they're happening.
Mhm.
How can you recognize when this is happening to you? What are some techniques to use to when you just, you're not sure?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, the number one go-to is journaling. And then typically, New Year's Eve, I go back and I look at all the entries from the year before, and I'm like, "Whoa." You start to see patterns. And to your point about, like, your parents, you start to decipher, like, "No, that's not me, that's my dad." And my dad has been a dominant voice in my head for many, many years, and I'm just over the past maybe 3 years slowly getting to the point where I'm, like, listening to my own voice. But yeah, journaling is definitely, you know, a go-to for me, but then I also just developed the practice of taking action before you have all the answers, and then, documenting what the outcomes are, because I think that really does help you build more confidence and trust in yourself. And then lastly, just keep your word to yourself, because oftentimes I think that when we say we're gonna do something for ourselves and then we don't do it, that's what's eroding our self-trust, which erodes our confidence, which makes us not really, you know, we're not willing to take action because honestly, we don't believe that we are going to show up for ourselves. So just building that practice of doing what you say you're going to do for yourself so that you can rebuild that self-trust. And I
Yeah.
think those three together work really well.
Yeah. I always like to question the source. Who's saying this? And if I have insight into their life experience, I
Mhm.
can kinda understand the root of where that might be coming from. Like, my mom grew
Mhm.
up in depression. So did my dad. My dad went off to a war when he was 17 years old,
Oh.
and their point of reference is much different than mine, you know?
Mhm.
So they have maybe they're dealing with scarcity issues or something like that, and I wanna make sure that I understand where they're coming from before I say no. And, a lot of times I'll just set a boundary, right? So, um, especially when people like to give advice, because everybody likes to give advice,
Mhm.
and I like to give advice. That I'm an expert in my field, so my advice has proof behind it.
Mhm.
But opinions, I'm talking about opinions based on, their realities. Um, and when you say no and set a boundary, one thing I've learned about boundaries, when someone's trying to control you and you say no and set a boundary, there's going to be the adult version of a temper tantrum.
Yep.
And that's how you know your boundary is working.
Mhm.
When you see that, it's easy to get upset. You've upset a person nobody wants to upset. But you have to realize that that's actually a good thing because your boundary's working. And then when I do set a boundary of with someone or myself, um, well, with someone really, I don't explain. Like I don't try to explain like why I'm setting it. Um, because that makes me sound not confident. It's just like, nope. And if you start explaining, that gives them the opportunity to try to talk you out of it. So why even bother doing that?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah. Let's see what else. We were talking about like um some communication strategies people can use, um saying things like, you know, I'm not asking for feedback on this decision, right? So that just sets people up for, I don't need your advice. It's a little more polite way to say it. Or say something like, "This works for my life right now."
Mhm.
Especially when you're making a big pivot. Um, I appreciate your concern, but I've got this handled.
Mhm.
So these are all good things to say. And the fourth one that I had was, "We see this differently, and that's okay."
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm also a big supporter of affirmations. So one of the ones that I typically say to myself when I know that I have to make a hard decision, but I haven't quite figured it all out, is I've made hard choices before and I can do it again. Or
Mm.
they say, um, I may not have all the information, but I know I can figure it out. Because then that way it gives you room to kind of step up for yourself, to tap into maybe dormant resources inside of yourself. And when you affirm yourself in that way, it opens your mind to possibilities like, okay, I can do this. Um, and then there's one that I had recently came up with that I think would probably be helpful for those who are watching now. Is I release the need for permission that isn't mine to seek. I trust my voice, I honor my truth, and I choose the path that fits, even if no one else understands it. So that's my newest one.
Mm.
And that's helpful because I left a job that I had been in for 5 years. And I stayed as long as I did because of that permission. I don't know who I was looking for permission from, but it was just this unwillingness to move on, even though I knew that it was not a good fit. Um, but through the course of working through some barriers in therapy, I finally got to a point of letting it go. But, it was one of those things that I had to figure out what was the barrier. And a lot of times the voice of your parents saying, stay in a stable job, don't job hop, and that kind of thing was a huge influence. But yeah, I'm gonna be like you when I grow up. I'm gonna eventually leave corporate. Uh,
I mean, but isn't that that's and so this ties into my book as well, but we're conditioned from a very young age. I mean, the school system was originally developed the way it is today to train people to be good workers. And it's like a 150 or
Mhm.
more year old paradigm that has worked for previous generations really well when, America was trying to build fast, build factories, build cars, assembly lines, all the things that you know, were made the previous century boom. And so
Mhm.
we have a lot of that thinking that's been passed down and these systems that have been passed down. But not everybody is cut out for that. Like in school we sit at our desk, we listen, we take a break for recess or lunch, and then we come back and sit at our desk some more. I mean, doesn't that sound like what we do in a 9 to 5 in some cases?
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
all, but some. Um, yeah, so we've really it goes deeper than we think sometimes, that conditioning. Um, so what there was a big takeaway I put here is stop performing your life for an audience.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we want to just really think about what we're doing. Um, so if anybody wants to chime in, this is your opportunity. I'm trying to watch the chat. It's just a little skinny thing at the
Yeah,
bottom.
yeah.
But has anybody tried following a rule that didn't work out for you? I mean, this is obvious, but I'm sure everybody has. But do you want to share one? Um, or maybe an expectation that's keeping you from doing something right now in your life? If anybody wants to share, that's great. And then one thing it would be, what would you do differently if nobody was watching, or you felt like nobody was watching? Because chances are nobody's really watching.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely an overestimation of people watching you. Um, what would I do differently? That's a good question. I have to think about that for a second. What would I do? I think I wouldn't hesitate as much. And I think that because I hesitate a lot on publishing things, you
Ah,
know, yeah, I'll reread it like 50 times before before I hit publish. And I think I could have released a lot more work if I didn't do that so much. The overthinking thing is still, it's just something I'm still working through.
yeah, I have that problem too. I feel like my old coworkers are going to be reading everything I write, even though that's
Yep.
100% not true.
Yep.
Um, I would do nothing different. People who are watching says the bathrobe guy. You're in your bathrobe, and I love it. I love that publication. Actually, the bathrobe guy.
Yeah, that's funny.
Um, if people were watching. Uh, okay. Yeah. So we have another one. If I can not do it with people watching. Okay. Yes. Great. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think on social media, especially platforms like LinkedIn, where you're really tied to your employer and your coworkers, um, it's hard because they can see what very easily they can go and see what you published,
Hmm.
and God forbid you should have an opinion about something that your employer doesn't think
Right.
you should have, right?
Right.
The shoulds really take over in those scenarios.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I revamped my LinkedIn for that very reason.
Well, and I mean, that begs the question, should you always post whatever you feel like posting? No, you shouldn't, because you don't
Right.
wanna cause problems for yourself.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So it says, "I've learned, listen to your heart and follow your passion." Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think, there there is some measured, um, degrees of limits to what you should be sharing on social media, obviously, and that's not a should, that's just your own protection from others. You need to protect your peace, and if something's
Yeah.
gonna cause you to not have peace, then why do it? So,
Yeah.
overthinking the posts, good and bad, right?
Yeah.
If it's because of that reason, it's good. You don't wanna cause a problem for yourself, but, oh, yeah, see, hitting the publishing button is terrifying sometimes.
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
it is, yeah. Especially for people. I've been a writer my entire life, which sounds like an exaggeration, but it's really true. I have my first book from when I was 4. I have it in the other room,
Wow.
and I then published as a
Mhm.
7-year-old 3 a trilogy of 3 books about a dog, so, um,
Amazing.
I forget that people aren't comfortable sharing their writing,
Mhm.
but it is a huge one. It's a really big one,
Yeah.
especially new writers starting on Substack. I see a lot of, like, young adults, I wanna call, like, people in their 20s that are really just sharing something for the first time, and it can be really scary for them
Mhm.
because they think everybody's watching. But we just talked about that, not everybody.
Right. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, anything you'd like to add before we sign off?
No, I love the conversation. This was really great. I just would encourage people to know that they don't have to wait for permission to go down the path that feels right and fits who they are and who they're becoming. So
Yeah.
that would be my thing. And I'm really glad that we had a chance to have this conversation.
Yeah, I know, it's been really fun. So, I have a little closing challenge for people,
Okay.
um, and then I did want to mention one thing that I have coming up in case anybody's interested in that, but my challenge is to think about one should or expectation that is working in your head, maybe subconsciously even, that you could, ditch. You could just get rid of it this week. What would you do? Maybe this weekend, spend some time quietly thinking about that and, you know, how you would get rid of that. Let's see. Disconnect brought about by your desire for a situation to be different. I can't read the full. Remember,
Uh,
oh gosh.
oh, it's gone.
Yeah. I'm sorry, guys. We can't read them. It's so small. I'm afraid if I tap it, it'll make us disappear. Um, yeah. So think about one expectation you can get rid of this weekend that would help move you forward into whatever it is you're trying to achieve, and go to those worst case scenarios, best case scenarios, and do the other things that would help you get there. And then, um, for those of you who know me, my community is very active in my chat, and I poll my community. And on Tuesday, I ran a poll and I asked, what masterclass would you all like to see next? And everybody seems to be struggling with growth on Substack right now. It is summer, so it's a bit more quiet, but it's also a great time to really work on getting some traction. And so what came out of my Q&A was that people wanted, really the winner was, well, 2 things. They wanted to learn how to use notes to grow subscribers, and they also wanted to, learn how to make a digital product in a day. So I am offering my Notes to Subscribers masterclass on July 31st. So, I don't know, I can't really share the link with you, but I actually put it in my chat this morning. If you wanna go to my chat, it's there. So that's upcoming for anybody who's trying to grow. And, thank you, Shannon. Your publication is great. It talks about all the things that you have to have inside of you in order to be an entrepreneur or creator, solopreneur. So I love it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Anything else to add before we sign off? Any
No, that's it. If you're curious about how to make decisions that you don't regret, then check out the Get on Track publication as well. So I'd love to see you over there.
Yeah, she's got gold in that publication. Awesome, awesome content. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye.